For over a century, Rome had a rival that was richer, older, and ruled the seas while Rome was still learning to swim. A city so powerful, it once marched an army, with war elephants, over the Alps and brought Rome to the very edge of destruction. And when Rome finally won, it didn't just defeat this city, it erased it, burned it, demolished it, and made sure the world would remember the name only as a warning. This is the story of Carthage, Rome's greatest enemy, and how you destroy a civilization so completely that you almost write it out of history. Carthage began as a colony of the Phoenicians, brilliant traders and sailors from the coast of modern Lebanon. Founded on the coast of North Africa, in what is now Tunisia, traditionally around 814 BC, Carthage grew into the great commercial superpower of the Western Mediterranean. Its ships carried goods across the sea. Its harbour was an engineering marvel, a vast circular military port that could shelter and launch hundreds of warships. For a long time, if you wanted to trade in the Western Mediterranean, you did it on Carthage's terms. And then a young, aggressive republic on the Italian peninsula began to grow. Rome, two rising powers, both hungry, both proud, sharing one sea. There was only ever going to be one ending. The wars between them are called the Punic Wars, and there were three of them, spread across more than a century. The first was fought largely at sea, and remarkably, land-loving Rome built itself a navy from almost nothing and beat the greatest sea power in the world at its own game. Carthage lost, and lost badly, but it's the second war that gave history one of its greatest commanders, Hannibal. In 218 BC, rather than wait for Rome to come to him, Hannibal did the unthinkable. He marched an army, including war elephants, out of Spain, over the snow-choked Alps, and straight down into Italy itself. It was one of the boldest military gambles ever attempted, and it nearly worked. For years, Hannibal rampaged across Italy, crushing every Roman army sent against him. At a place called Cannae, he surrounded and annihilated a Roman force far larger than his own. One of the worst defeats Rome would ever suffer, still studied in military academies today. Rome was reeling. It seemed like Carthage might actually win. But Rome had something Hannibal couldn't crush: depth. It refused to surrender, raised new army after new army, and eventually took the war to Carthage's homeland in Africa. Hannibal was finally recalled to defend his city, and at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, he was defeated. Carthage lost the Second War too, stripped of its empire, its navy, its power. But it survived, and that, for some in Rome, was the problem. Even broken, Carthage slowly grew rich again through trade. And in Rome, that recovery bred a deep, almost obsessive fear. There's a famous story that one Roman senator, Cato, ended every single speech he gave, no matter the topic, with the same phrase, "Carthage must be destroyed." Whether or not he said it every time, it captured a mood. Rome had decided that as long as Carthage existed at all, it was a threat, so Rome manufactured a war. In 149 BC, it made demands on Carthage that grew crueler and more impossible by the day, until finally it demanded that the Carthaginians abandon their city entirely. They refused, and so Rome laid siege to one of the greatest cities in the world. The people of Carthage fought with the desperation of those who have nothing left to lose. The siege dragged on for 3 years. They turned their temples into weapons workshops. It's said the women cut off their hair to make ropes for catapults. But against the full, relentless might of Rome, the end was inevitable. In 146 BC, the Romans broke through. What followed was a nightmare. Days of brutal fighting through the city, street by street, house by house, as the defenders were slowly overwhelmed. When it was finally over, Rome made an example of Carthage that would echo for centuries. The city was systematically burned and demolished. The survivors were sold into slavery. A civilization that had lasted 700 years was deliberately wiped off the map. You've probably heard that the Romans then sowed the ground with salt so nothing would ever grow there again. It's a powerful image, but historians think it's almost certainly a later legend, invented long after the fact. The truth didn't need salt. The destruction was thorough enough on its own. And here is the haunting part. Because Rome was the victor, and because it erased Carthage so completely, most of what we know about the Carthaginians comes from the people who hated and destroyed them. Their own libraries and records were lost. Even the darkest accusations against them, like the claim that they sacrificed children to their gods, come largely from Greek and Roman enemies and remain debated by historians to this day. We are left trying to understand a great civilization almost entirely through the eyes of the people who wanted it gone. That is the ultimate fate of the defeated. To lose not just the war, but the right to tell your own story. Carthage challenged the greatest power of the ancient world and very nearly won. Its ships ruled the sea, its greatest general humbled Rome again and again. And in the end, it was punished not just with defeat, but with erasure. Today you can walk through its scattered ruins on the edge of a modern city, and it's almost impossible to imagine that this was once Rome's equal, the rival that made the masters of the world afraid. Carthage reminds us that history is written by the winners, and that sometimes the losers were every bit as great. If that idea grips you, subscribe. Next time, we ask how a civilization 4,500 years ago moved millions of tons of stone with breathtaking precision, the real engineering of ancient Egypt.